On this episode of the GeoTalks podcast, we're discussing how GIS software can aid in research with Tiffany Wu, one of my colleagues here at Blue Marble. Tiffany's master's thesis focused on studying the health of eelgrass meadows in Casco Bay, Maine. We had the pleasure of speaking with Cheyenne Adams, a biologist for the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, and Janelle Goeke, a staff scientist for the Casco Bay Estuary Partnership, about their contributions to Tiffany's master's thesis. Let's get into it. All right, so good morning. Hello, everyone. This is another episode of GeoTalks, and today I am joined by my co-host for this episode and one of my coworkers here at Blue Marble Geographics, Tiffany Wu. Welcome.
Thanks, Meg. Hey, everyone. I'm Tiffany, and I'm the R&D analyst at Blue Marble Geographics, where I focus on geospatial data processing, Dockerizing machine learning models, and wrangling the occasional PyTorch build. I started off as an intern with Blue Marble back a year and a half ago, and I've stuck around after finishing my master's thesis, which I focused on the predictive modeling of eelgrass with, specifically in Casco Bay, Maine.
Yeah, and we're excited to talk about it today. How's the weather where you are? I believe you're in Brunswick this morning.
I am, yes. It's a beautiful day in Brunswick. It's nice and sunny, and excited to maybe hit up some farmers markets later on.
Absolutely. It sounds like a good time for that. Can you tell us a little bit about the purpose and intent of your work on your master's thesis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my thesis is on essentially modeling eelgrass or zoster marina in Casco Bay, Maine, using a species distribution model called MaxEnt or maximum entropy. This model incorporates areas of known presence along with environmental covariates, which are variables that can influence the presence or absence of a species. For instance, I use temperature, salinity, bathymetry, total nitrogen, dissolved oxygen, and turbidity as a proxy for light attenuation for mine. And the goal of the study was basically to see, okay, there's some great data from both Maine DEP and the Casco Bay Estuary Partnership. Can we determine, given pre-existing data, where eelgrass might be located in the present day?
We're super excited to learn about kind of the impact of this kind of research and learn more about the process of putting together this master's thesis. So thank you for that overview. It sounds like your thesis was quite the task to take on, and my guess is that you didn't do it alone. So would you like to introduce our guests for today's episode?
Yeah, absolutely. Very lucky to be joined today by Janelle Goeke from the Casco Bay Estuary Partnership, as well as Cheyenne Adams from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, just up the street from our headquarters in Hollowell, actually.
Yes, it's so awesome to have you both here today. Welcome, Janelle. Welcome, Cheyenne.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to be talking to you both.
Thank you for joining us on the show today. We're really excited to talk about your work with Tiffany. Tiffany, would you give us a little bit more information about your work together?
Yeah, absolutely. I had the opportunity to work with Janelle Goeke from the Casco Bay Estuary Partnership and Cheyenne Adams from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. I obtained data sets regarding environmental covariates for the max entropy model from reaching out to Janelle after meeting her at Palooza, which is this annual event celebrating and studying seagrass organized by Phil Colarusso, a longtime EPA biologist. The data on confirmed eelgrass meadow locations from the study years 2013, 2018, and 2022 were from Maine DEP, including some of Seth Barker's pivotal work studying where they were.
Yeah, Cheyenne, would you give us some more information about your work on this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a biologist with the Marine Vegetation Mapping Program that's at DEP, or the Department of Environmental Protection in Maine. So specifically, the Marine Vegetation Mapping Program was established in 2021 and began collecting data in 2023 in the Mid-Coast region. And the way this program works now is on a 5-year regional rotation coastwide. So going forward, we'll be producing seagrass and specifically eelgrass maps on an annual basis for one of 5 regions on the coast. So this means that each region will be updated every 5 years, which is a big improvement from the temporal resolution of eelgrass maps that we had previously, especially for locations outside of Casco Bay. And this is a relatively new program, but prior to the establishment of this program, DEP was just sort of opportunistically mapping eelgrass, and that includes the maps that Tiffany mentioned for Casco Bay. Casco Bay is an area where we have the most environmental data and the most seagrass maps available, so it's a really great place to do the sort of work that Tiffany did.
That's awesome. So, Janelle, can you tell us a little bit about your work with Tiffany?
Yeah, happy to. So I'm the staff scientist for the Casco Bay Estuary Partnership, and I've held that role for just a bit over a year now. And right about when I started in February of 2024, we had just gotten some funding to work on a big collaborative project around eelgrass. And shortly after that, I got an email from Tiffany with some information about her master's thesis and looking for help finding data sources. So the Casco Bay Estuary Partnership, we actually collect very little data ourselves, but we're part of the National Estuary Program run under EPA. And the role of all of these programs is really to convene people within their regions and bring people together and make sure people are moving in the same direction to do what's best for the Bay and the communities that rely on them. So we tend to be very aware of existing data sources and very well connected. So when Tiffany reached out to me, I knew about the existence of a number of different buoys that she mentioned, continuous monitoring stations, and long-term water quality data sets that have been collected for about 30 years, and was able to help her get that data or help get her in contact with the people who are able to provide that data to her. So we actually didn't collect the data ourselves. That was done by other great organizations like Nearcoos or Friends of Casco Bay, but I was able to help her get her hands on that data and figure out how to incorporate it into her model.
That's awesome. It seems like, Tiffany, you had some great resources for this project.
Definitely.
Can you tell me about the distinction between seagrass and eelgrass?
So eelgrass is one species of seagrass. There are many species of seagrass. In Maine, eelgrass is the most dominant seagrass species. It's one of 2 species that are found in Maine. So the other one is widgeon grass. And widgeon grass is typically found in tidally restricted areas or salt marsh pools. So eelgrass is really kind of the iconic seagrass species that you see on the coast and in open waters.
Nice, thank you.
To quickly add something to that, um, while Zoster marina or eelgrass is the seagrass species that we have here in Maine, a lot of the things we're going to be talking about today, I think, that affect eelgrass and lead to its decline are pretty common across all seagrass species. So this is not a Maine specific episode. I think the things that we're going to be talking about here today are important for anybody who's interested in eelgrass questions anywhere around the world. It doesn't matter if it's a tropical, temperate species. They all have a lot of things in common.
Yeah, I appreciate that additional context. Thank you so much. So let's get into talking about eelgrass specifically and why it matters. So, Tiffany, do you want to speak a little bit to this?
Yeah, absolutely. Eelgrass is important because it's considered a crucial blue carbon resource. Seagrasses can absorb carbon dioxide at rates up to 35 times faster than rainforests can, according to the World Wildlife Fund. In addition, according to the UNEP, or United Nations Environmental Program, seagrasses cover merely 0.1% of the ocean floor, but provide up to 18% of carbon storage. So that's a lot of heavy lifting by these durable plants. Eelgrasses are considered a major global carbon sink, along with salt marshes and mangroves. And of course, we're focusing on Zostera marina because of the study context of Maine, but all species of seagrasses play an important role in ecosystem health and function.
Really quickly, I just wanted to mention that in episode 1 of the GeoTalks podcast, we do dive into the subject of carbon sinks, why they're valuable, and specifically in relation to a drone mapping analysis of a salt marsh. So check out episode 1 if you haven't heard that yet. Thank you for that perspective about why the species of eelgrass is beneficial to the environment. I think that our audience will definitely be curious about that.
Yeah, eelgrass is a really important fish habitat. It's actually considered an essential fish habitat. In Maine specifically, it's really valuable for blue mussel settlement and juvenile lobster habitat. And of course, we all know how important lobsters are for supporting coastal communities. So it's great to directly support the lobster populations by having healthy eelgrass beds in Maine. In particular, eelgrass tends to provide a really important three-dimensional structure in the nearshore environment that provides habitat as a nursery grounds for a lot of marine and estuarine species in their juvenile life stages. So that's one role that eelgrass plays that's really particularly important for supporting coastal ecosystems, as well as the communities and fishermen that depend on them. Eelgrass also provides a lot of water quality benefits. So sediment stabilization, water clarity, and it can locally ameliorate the effects of ocean and coastal acidification, which can be beneficial, for shell building organisms like mussels and clams.
Yeah, and Janelle, did you have any insights on this as well?
I think Cheyenne did a great job of summing up the habitat value of eelgrass for a lot of those different aquatic species. And I think it's just important to remember that it's not just the aquatic species relying on the eelgrass, it's the humans that then rely on those aquatic species. So if you like eating lobsters or mussels, then you're reaping the benefits of eelgrass. And any commercial fisherman who makes their living off of the water catching these species that live their juvenile life stages in eelgrass, their livelihoods are really directly tied to the well-being of eelgrass in their region. And it's not just fishermen or the aquatic species either. Anybody who has coastal property, eelgrass, like Cheyenne mentioned, can provide a lot of water quality benefits and even reduce wave energy from things like coastal storms and reduce erosion and coastal erosion, which up here in Maine, we had the really big winter storms in January of 2024. So I think that's on a lot of people's minds right now. And eelgrass helps with that as well. So eelgrass isn't just something that's providing benefits to aquatic animals. It provides a lot of benefits to humans as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of our recent episodes was about a team working with the University of Maine to kind of discuss the impact of those specific storms and how it affects coastal erosion. So, all of it ties together for sure. And Tiffany, did you have anything else to share?
So over 50% of documented eelgrass beds in Casco Bay have disappeared since 2018. Per a recent EPA Region 1 Blue Carbon report, coastal Maine currently has around 22,000 acres of eelgrass to be protected. The losses of eelgrass in this Casco Bay region have major implications for fisheries, carbon dioxide sequestration, and the maritime economy. And through my thesis, I observed that eelgrass beds seem to be more patchy and fragmented. This could place them at increased risk of threats from warming waters, pollution, dredging, along with invasive species, particularly the invasive green crab that's been popping up a lot in Maine.
So, Tiffany, what role did GIS and GIS software play in developing your thesis?
GIS was absolutely instrumental for my thesis. I used it for both spatial and statistical analysis. I was able to visualize locations of existing and previously confirmed eelgrass beds, conduct my exploratory spatial data analysis, and of course, utilize maximum entropy or maxent modeling to gauge eelgrass presence likelihood from 0 to 100%.
Specifically, another thing that we wanted to discuss was the role of bathymetry in studying eelgrass, including like studying Casco Bay. I know that you guys mentioned that there were some gaps there. So, how did bathymetry kind of play into the whole project?
So bathymetry was the one covariate that was more concrete because eelgrass presence always sharply dropped with depth. And this, of course, makes sense because it needs sufficient light to grow. When I was researching software for my thesis, I encountered Global Mapper, which Blue Marble produces, and I was really impressed by the terrain modeling features. So I did drop in one state of Maine data set for bathymetry, and it looked really interesting. So
Yeah, that sounds like a valuable visualization to add to your project.
I also just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Maine Coastal Mapping Initiative that produces a lot of bathymetry data, including the data that I believe Tiffany may have used for her project. They have some great sources of bathymetry data and benthic habitat modeling tools. They are somewhat limited by their boat draft, so they aren't always able to collect data in the shallow habitats where eelgrass grows, but they are a great source of bathymetry data for anybody who's looking for that.
Yeah, we'll be sure to include that in the description. Thank you so much, Janelle. Continuing this conversation about GIS software, I was going to pose the question, how can GIS software be used to demonstrate the impact of urbanization and agricultural pollution on eelgrass? Because I know that that's a factor in this as well.
One interesting example of this is a small project that was recently undertaken by the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future in Maine to map DEP shoreline stabilization projects to assess the cumulative impact. So this is both living shoreline and shoreline hardening. And interestingly, the project mapped shoreline stabilization both from DEP permits and then also from aerial imagery. And so the goal with a project like that is to sort of look at some of these land use changes and the cumulative impact that they could have on the nearshore environment, including eelgrass beds that are near those project activities. I'm a broken record, but this project occurred in Casco Bay because that's the area where we had the most eelgrass mapping layers available to compare the shoreline stabilization project layer 2. So it's another example of some of the really interesting things you can do when you have more eelgrass distribution data, and we're just working on getting to that point for the rest of the coast.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
that sounds so cool. Can I
Um,
do a follow-up to that question?
yeah, please.
Okay, awesome. What would you say are some of the most rewarding things from your experience just doing your day-to-day job?
I think one of the most rewarding things for me is just the connections and seeing how much can um, seeing what can be built off of just talking with somebody. I mean, I connected with Tiffany because of Palooza she mentioned last year, and then she sent me an email, and now here we are over a year later talking about her thesis on this podcast together. And I mean, I know Cheyenne just because I was using her map layers of eelgrass so frequently and had additional questions about them and was able to get in contact with DEP. So I think one of the most rewarding things is forming these connections and realizing just how much energy there is for eelgrass restoration, for asking these sorts of questions, how many people are curious, and how many people can benefit from this data once we collect it. It's also always rewarding when you hear stories of success. As part of a community based mapping program that's sprung out of this collaborative project we're doing, we found out about a new uncharted, undiscovered eelgrass bed in Casco Bay that's just appeared within the last year. And a very recent success story, our pilot seed based restoration study that we conducted in October 2024. I just heard 4 days ago that those seeds have germinated and we have a little bit of a sign of restoration success in Casco Bay.
That's so
That's
exciting.
incredible. I feel like both the community benefits you mentioned as well as the ecological ones are so incredible to see firsthand and absolutely one of the best parts of the job.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It definitely seems like collaboration was a key element of this project, and um, it really helps the objective of it, which is, to help inform things that impact the people and the organisms that are living on the coast. So
both Meg and I have a background in natural resources and being outdoors, essentially. Meg worked at the Audubon Center in Connecticut as a camp counselor for many years, and I studied environmental science at my undergrad and continued that into my master's. What advice, if any, would you provide to budding environmental scientists or enthusiasts in the field today?
I think my biggest piece of advice would just be go outside and ask questions. My parents are both engineers and they don't understand how they managed to raise an environmental scientist. And I frequently tell them they just let me spend too much time outside as a kid. And I think the heart of ecology and environmental science is really just looking at something you see in the natural environment and asking why. Why does the eelgrass grow over here and not over there? Why are the number of fish that we're catching going down? Just why, and trying to understand the answers to those questions.
And I think it was similar for me too. Growing up in coastal California, I was lucky to be able to wander outside and have access to tide pools or sandy shorelines, and being able to just spend time outdoors without distraction was so instrumental to me in my appreciation for the natural world. So I can concur.
Yeah, same here. I would say the best piece of advice that I would give is similar to what Janelle said, in that it's like get involved and ask how, because there's always local places that are looking for volunteers and, looking for people to get involved with this kind of work because it's work that needs to be done. And so I think that really like figuring out your role in your local community is valuable to finding other people who are like-minded and making an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. So send that email, go to that community event, show up to that volunteering site. And I think oftentimes it pays off in spades.
For real, it really does. Thank you so much, Janelle and Cheyenne and Tiffany, for having this discussion today. I think that it's a very valuable conversation about conservation and the ways that, we can research and inform these really important studies. So, uh, thank you for joining us. And Janelle, would you like to share your contact information or any resources?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me will probably be over email. It's just janelle.goeke at maine.edu, as the Casco Bay Estuary Partnership is based at the University of Southern Maine. If anybody wants to look up our website, also my office phone number is on there and they're free to give me a call. I will just shout out our website as a great source of very general information on Casco Bay for anybody who's unfamiliar with the region. And we are actually getting ready to launch a monitoring dashboard that will help people like Tiffany find out where people are collecting what sorts of data in Casco Bay and use it for projects just like this.
Yeah, so if anyone is interested in getting more information on the marine vegetation mapping program, or has ideas for collaborations or other uses of the data or the low tide aerial imagery, I'm happy to talk. My email is just my name. So that's cheyenne.adams@maine.gov.
That is amazing. We'll be sure to link all of that in the description so that people can check it out and find out more about their work. Yeah, Tiffany, do you have any resources or contact information that you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an honor being a co-host on this GeoTalks episode today with you, Meg. It was so much fun talking to both Janelle and Cheyenne about their work. And I would say a good way to reach me would simply just be through my Blue Marble email, which is just my name, first initial, so Tiffany W at bluemarblegeo.com. If folks listening are interested in our software features that we talked about, like terrain modeling or bathymetric mapping, you can find info on our website. And yeah, feel free to email if you have any questions, comments.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for co-hosting this episode with me. It's so great to talk about work like this, and hopefully we will see more of your work in the future. So thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today on the GeoTalks podcast. As we mentioned, all of the resources will be available in the description. Thank you!